Getting older means you may not have the stamina of a 20-year-old. Or you may be able to do things a little slower. But as you age, you get aches and pains, and you don't have the stamina. Maybe a little arthritis is starting to creep into your hands or elbows or shoulders or whatever it is, which means we'll have to find a different way of doing something if we still want to be able to do so. And one of the things I want to still be able to do is sharpen my knives. Now, I still plan on sharpening my tools, such as chisels and wood planes, by hand. I have way too many knives to sharpen by hand. So let's do a talk about on how I figured out a solution.
Hello anyone, I'm Scott Boehm. They call me the old farmer. In my younger days, sharpening knives or anything else was no big deal. It didn't even cause me a problem sharpening lawnmower blades. If it needed doing, I did it. It was no more difficult than slicing a roast beef or similar dense material. I didn't think anything about it. I've shown several different ways of sharpening, mostly woodworking tools. These tools need to be even sharper than kitchen knives. As long as I can, I will continue sharpening wood planes, chisels, and other tools by hand. Kitchen knives, though, is a different story. At 72 years old in 2022, I'm having a bit of arthritis, but it doesn't bother me too much. What it's doing is making it harder to hold on to blades while sharpening them by hand. Our kitchen knives are not sharpened on a daily basis, and all too often I let the time between sharpening go too long. It means more work to sharpen the knives and cleavers. The way I keep wood tools sharpened is that I usually will do a quick sharpening before using and then sharpen often during the project. Yes, sometimes I put them away while needing sharpening. It just depends on how tired I am at the time. Remember, I sharpen wood tools by hand. It usually only takes a couple of minutes, but sometimes the effort is too much. When it comes to kitchen knives, I have been seeing on YouTube some channels using a 1" by 30" belt sander to sharpen tools. I wanted to try it out myself, but before I invest in such a sanding belt, I wanted to try it out first. I tried first to use the Bauer oscillating belt sander. I have a 400 grit belt on, and so at least it should work good enough to try it out. I really didn't like how it sharpened a knife. I sharpened my kitchen knives to 11 degrees per side, which puts it somewhere between a chopping knife and a fillet knife for sharpness. I have a ceramic steel to run my knives on between sharpenings. It actually does a bit of sharpening while reforming the burr. I thought about it for a couple of months, letting it bubble in the back of my head, and ran across another YouTube video that used a 1 by 30 belt sander. Currently, they are about $60 from Harber Freight. I wanted to try this out without taking up a lot of extra space if it didn't work out, and also being retired. $60 is 4 pizzas from our favorite pizzeria. Or we can shop groceries for a week with about $60, even in these type times. I have a Chicago Electric 3" by 21" belt sander. For just over $15, I could buy 10 1,000 grit belts for my Chicago Electric belt sander. If I didn't like how it works, I can use the belts to put a fine finish on a project. The belts would not go to waste. Just a few days later, the belts were here, and I waited for a good time to be in the garage and tried it out with just one knife. I liked how it turned out. Remember, I sharpened to 11 degrees. I don't like pushing a blade to sharpen it. In fact, in video 88, A Better Way to Sharpen with a Grinding Wheel, I turned the DeWalt grinder around so that if I used it for creating a bevel or to sharpen lawnmower blades, I drag the blade on the wheel instead of pushing it on the wheel. I never did like the pushing approach to sharpening. Back in the days when grinding wheels were turned by human power, most times they dragged the blade instead of pushing it on the wheel. Granted, the sparks come out opposite of the way when pushing a blade on a grinding wheel, but with some care, such as to make sure your blade stays cool, it's not a problem. It took a day to find the right tool to hold a belt sander, and decided on the Franklin workstation. If you don't have a bench yet, getting one of these is a good idea. I've used mine for just about anything and everything. It's a good tool, well worth considering for your shop. I clamped the belt sander with the workstation by clamping it to the handle. And I lowered the speed of the belt to the slowest it would go. I've used an angle meter to demonstrate what an 11-degree angle looks like. Sometimes the handle of the knife gets in the way because of the design of the belt sander. This is where the 1x30 belt sander may be a better choice. But by angling the knife, I can sharpen all my knives, even the small paring knives. It's easy getting a heavy burr on the blade, so I don't use much pressure. By using a light pressure, it helps keep the blade cool. When the blade is sharp enough to shave with, I, by the lightest touch, work on the burr. It's easier to remove because I'm dragging the blade instead of pushing the blade. If I'm having trouble slicing paper, it's because of the burr. I carefully run my finger both ways across the blade to feel which side has the burr, and angle a light run of the blade across the belt. It does take several passes because of how light I am laying the blade on the belt. It's barely touching. After each pass, I check the burr with my finger. Sometimes I take it a bit too far and then I have to hone the other side again. I would like to get the Harber Freight Central Machinery 1x30 belt sander. The machine itself looks like it's something that was built by an OEM company that will sell them to anybody. And you can tell this is true because of the high price of the gum label on the side of the sander. The YouTube channels I saw using this belt sander, they stripped off just about everything to get it down to a couple of pulleys, the motor, and the back plate. Then they did something like what I did for the Chicago Electric belt sander and clamped it so the belt part is horizontal. I took a quick look over on Amazon to see whether they have higher grade belts for a 1x30 sander, and they had grits up to 5,000. So I think you could sharpen just about anything you want with such a high grit. I may try later on sharpening a chisel this way, just to see how it turns out. I think I have an inexpensive solution to sharpening kitchen knives without breaking the bank. Before we go, it's important to quickly mention for all who are visiting to subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, and share with friends and family. Now for the most important part. Thank you to those who have subscribed. Thank you. And yes, thank you to those who are visiting. We value you too. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that we may receive a pittance from YouTube to cover expenses. We replaced one camera, tripod, and bought a water-cooled editor for video production, plus all the tools we review. So if you could help us reach that 1,000 subscription point, thank you. Well, this is the old farmer Scott Boehm. Be well, be safe, and be kind to someone.
Don't forget to click like and click subscribe on the Old Farmer YouTube channel. And thanks again for watching. Bye.
The VFW National Home for Children, providing families of veterans and active duty military opportunities for growth and development in a nurturing community. Please consider a donation to help their children and families. I.C. Rhodes speaking.